So recently, my friend asked me to help them install a light bar on their 2014 Jeep. Looks like this, except his has the tow hooks. And this particular light bar does have mounting brackets that will go right into where the tow hooks are. We watched a couple videos. One that had the most useful stuff was from Flippin' Customized, and he kind of talked about how he had issues where there was nothing to mount to because he didn't have tow hooks on his. Both of our vehicles have tow hooks, so we do have the mounting hardware. So I decided I was going to do basically a follow-up video to this guy's video to show what it looks like to do the install when you do have tow hooks. So that's kind of the premise of this video. I don't cover every single thing, but I wanted to highlight some of the differences from tow hooks to no tow hooks.
Just documenting where these bolts and things are. We're taking off the lower part of the bumper. These were all push pin pullouts, and then here we had the quarter turn. There was 3 of them. 1, 2, 3 quarter turns, and then ours only had 2 10mm bolts on the front, and then we have to take out these back here. Back 2 bolts to remove this mud guard or mud shield are 13mm. So you know what to grab. Don't forget you got 2 10mm bolts on the sides of the mud guard connecting it to your fender well. Okay, just to show you what we did to get this out of here. There were the 3/4 turn, these guys, and some of them are kind of have a hassle to get out. You kind of got to wiggle them. Some came out really easy. So those came out. Then once those are off and your bottom 10mm bolts are off, this is just held in by these little snaps. And you don't want to break any, but basically we just went, and while we had our hand up in here, kind of wiggle this one, pop that out, and you can get the next one. You can get like 2 of them get started, and then just slowly work your way around, and then go back to the other side, slowly work your way around. The whole bottom is free, so it's just hanging on by these top couple, and you just want to be careful when you pull it out. You don't want to snap any of these off. But it came out nice, no problem. Then that piece is just kind of sitting up in there, and it was just hooked on by basically those hold up in there. So once you pull this out, this just falls out. That's normal. Anyway, so that's how that comes out of there. It wasn't too bad. So this is a 2014 Overland. I have a 2017, but it's got the same tow hooks. So in the other videos, all the ones we've seen, they don't show doing it with the tow hooks. So that's the point of this video, is to kind of give some images of that. So I'll try and get some shots before we touch anything. But that's what we're gonna hook to. So okay, for the bolts on the tow hooks, the 5/8 fits better than the 16mm. 16 still fits, but it not quite a tight a fit. So if I were you, I would use the 5/8. Fits way better. Okay, we had a little modification we have to make. So as you can see right there, that nub that's on the hook was interfering with the metal plate, just the way things lined up. Couldn't quite get it to go into place properly without grinding away like 1/8 of an inch. Now on this side, we didn't have a problem, went right in. So you may or may not have that issue, and let me show you another view. So these tow hooks do have a nut on the back. So theoretically, the nut on the passenger side is a little bit tighter than the nut on the driver's side, which decides where this lines up. So instead of fussing with that, trying to loosen that up, because that's never been loosened since the car has existed, we just decided to grind away at the bracket just a hair. So, and then we put some anti-seize grease on there just so it didn't rust. If you have the time, I would recommend after you grind it, paint it with some anti-rust Rust-Oleum type paint to seal it. Also, while you're in here, any rust that you have, you'd be smart to go ahead and treat it with some Ospo or phosphoric acid, and then paint it with some Rust-Oleum. Because that, you know, it's the one opportunity you got this apart, so you might as well do a little cleanup while you're in here. So have that on hand, so you don't have to stop your project, and you can just get it done while you're in here.
Unfortunately, I didn't get a video of this particular part of the installation. Once you remove the bolts for the tow hook, there is a bracket where those two bolts screw into. That is totally loose once you remove the bolts, and it is somewhat directional, so you want to pay attention to how that bracket is sitting up in there. And so when you go to put the other bracket in and kind of tighten it all back together, you get it the right direction. So just one thing we fussed with a bit that I regret not paying attention to better when I removed it. So hopefully you won't make that mistake.
All right, so we're in the process of lining this thing up. So we made a mark in the middle of the toe bracket on both sides, over there and here. And then we measured from the outside edge of this to that center line. We did it on both. So for us, it was roughly 6 and a 1/16 of an inch from outside here to here. We made that the same. So that kind of puts this in the middle, if you think about it. That's how we centered it. Because these brackets have a little wiggle room right to left. So that's how you kind of get that in the right spot. Then we, before we tighten these up, we put the light bar in, and then we kind of like got it placed where we wanted it to, and started putting these hex bolts in. And they got a washer and then a spring washer. So that goes on the outside of here to keep this from loosening up. But we wanted to go ahead and put this mounting bolt in here and get the light bar kind of in place a little bit, so that if we needed to adjust it, we'd be able to see how it looks in place. So, and the way we kind of see that it's where we want it to be is if you look at this tow hook, think of that as like a horizontal plane, and then the light bar perpendicular here, and we just kind of eyeball it. And there's probably another way of doing it, but that's how we kind of eyeballed it. And you got to think of how it's functionally going to be used. You're trying to like shine under fog, or maybe shine under something. So this is like a lower light bar, so you're kind of shining. You're not, whereas if this was mounted like on the top of your car, you might want it to point down a little bit, but we don't want that. So now's the time to kind of get that lined up, and you do that before the bolts are tightened down. All right, so just to show our electrical mounting, we use that post for the positive. Like I said in the other video, we used the jumper cable post for the negative, which is fine. And then we used this bolt for the relay. And on this relay, and I wish I would have shown it before, but there's like a little plastic clip to where the relay can slide off, and then you can tighten this in. Otherwise, you got to use a box wrench if you don't do that. If you slide that out of the way, then you can use the ratchet side. So anyway, just so you don't struggle. All right, when you're putting the bumper cover, lower bumper cover back on, there's this inner plastic piece that kind of sits right about there. And it normally, I think, would hook up in behind here somewhere, but the bracket seems like it's in the way. But what we did, we just kind of push that back, and it'll just tuck in behind it. And then we're hoping once we get this thing snapped together, maybe that will hook onto the bracket. But even if it doesn't, it's snapped in with push pins underneath, just so you know. Okay, to show where we ran the wire down to the light bar, outside edge of the radiator mount is where that wire comes out, but on the other side of the air pump. All right, so this particular install, we're going to be doing a wireless switch. They have these on Amazon. They have a little key fob or this on-off that you can stick someplace in the vehicle. And then there's this little relay that receives the signal. And basically you, on these things, you wire this one side, the hot, ground, ground, and hot. And so for us, we tapped into this blue wire, which on these light bars, basically putting 12 volts to the blue wire turns it on. And so we'll wire that into the positive output. Just as a test, you might be able to hear the click. That's the blue wire touching it to the 12 volts, turns on the light bar. So like I said, gonna hook that up to the wireless relay switch and make this install wireless so we don't have to go through the firewall. Okay, after we made the connections, we tucked the wires here. Here's where the connections were. And then we just used some double stick tape to plug that there. Can you flick the light on? So, there you go.
Overall, we were both pretty happy with how it came out. Light bar is nice and bright. If you liked the video, hit us up with a like. Appreciate it. So if you're interested in getting this light bar, I'm going to share an Amazon link. Also, there's going to be a link to this other guy's video where he talks about removing the lower fascia, which he does a pretty good job explaining that the bare minimum stuff you have to remove. Now, granted, his vehicle doesn't look like it had the mud flap on the bottom. So in this video, we do have the mud flap, so there's a little bit extra stuff that we removed. Maybe we didn't have to, but we did, and it was not that big a deal.